My father and I live exactly 4.3 miles apart. Google Maps says it's a 12-minute drive with no traffic. In the last 5 years, I've flown across an ocean twice, taken 3 work trips to London, 1 spontaneous weekend to Barcelona, and I still haven't managed to make that 12-minute drive. We shop at the same supermarket chain. We pay the same city taxes. We support the same miserable football team. We also haven't spoken since the day I told him I wasn't coming back home just because Mum would have wanted me to. He lives on the north side of the city. I'm down by the river. On paper, our lives look like they belong in the same story. Same city, same language, same weather app. But if I died tomorrow, there's a chance he'd find out from a notification on Facebook. People always talk about long-distance relationships like they're the hard ones. Airports, time zones, video calls. No one warns you about the kind of distance where you can stand at a traffic light and know that somewhere, 5 subway stops away, your own father is stirring sugar into his coffee. And you still can't bring yourself to dial his number. This is the story of how 2 people can live in the same city and still feel like they're on different planets. And how, after 5 years of silence, a message that simply read, "Are you in Berlin?" almost broke me. The last time I heard my father say my name out loud, it was in a hospital corridor that smelled like antiseptic and bad coffee. "Alex," he said, his voice rough with grief and exhaustion. "We need to be realistic." Mum had been dead for 6 hours. I remember because I had counted them, sitting in a plastic chair with my back pressed against the wall, feeling every minute like it was a stone dropping into a lake. We were in the family room outside the intensive care unit. There was a water dispenser, a fake plant, and a box of tissues that had already been emptied and refilled twice. Someone had left a half-eaten sandwich on the table, cheese curling at the edges, bread going hard. Dad stood by the window, hands in the pockets of his worn navy coat, staring at the car park. It was March, cold and gray. Our city looks particularly ugly in March, all dirty snow and impatient drivers. "She's gone," he said. "There's no point sitting here, pretending she's going to walk through that door." "I know," I said quietly. My voice didn't sound like mine. "They already told us." I couldn't say the word. Dad turned around. His eyes were red. For the first time, I noticed how old he looked. When you're a kid, you think your parents are frozen in time. Then one day, you see every year on their face. "Funeral," he said briskly, like we were discussing a work schedule. "We need to organize the funeral. The house, the paperwork. You'll have to come back home for a while." The words hit me like a physical shove. "Come back home?" I repeated. "Yes," he said, "at least for a few months. You can transfer your job back here. They owe you some flexibility after all those weekends you've put in. You're all I've got now, Alex." There it was. The hook disguised as an argument. "You're all I've got now." "I live in Berlin, Dad," I said. "My life is there. My work, my friends, my everything." "Berlin is just a city," he snapped. "This is home." He said home like it was a fact and not something that had started to feel like a museum the second I moved out. "I can come back for the funeral," I said slowly. "I can stay a week, 2, maybe. But I can't move back. My contract, my flat." "For God's sake," he exploded, "your mother's body is barely cold and you're talking about your flat in Berlin?" His voice ricocheted off the walls. The nurse at the desk looked up. Somewhere, a trolley squeaked along the linoleum floor. "I'm talking about my life," I said, my own voice rising. "The one I've built over the last 3 years, the one she was proud of. She told me to go. She told me to stay there." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "Don't you dare put words in her mouth," he said. "She wanted us together. She wanted family." "She wanted me happy," I said, more forcefully this time. "And I'm finally not miserable." The argument had been simmering for months. Ever since Mum's second round of chemo, Dad had started calling more, asking when I was planning to stop this Berlin experiment and come home like a proper daughter. Every call felt like a negotiation. How long are you going to keep living out of a suitcase? You're almost 30. Don't you want stability? What happens if something happens to us? Something had happened, the worst possible thing. And instead of making me want to run back to the house I grew up in, it made me want to dig my heels deeper into the ground I'd claimed as mine. Your mother died this morning, he said now, voice shaking. And you're telling me you won't move back in with your own father? Do you even hear yourself? I hear you, I said. I hear that you're drowning. I hear that everything hurts. It hurts me too. But moving back and pretending I never left isn't going to bring her back. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. What happened to you? He whispered. Berlin filled your head with this selfish nonsense. Your mother spoiled you, always saying follow your dreams, Alex. Now look at you, no roots, no partner, no kids, just flights and bars and God knows what. God knows what is a career I actually like, I shot back. Friends who feel like family, a therapist, a life that doesn't make me want to disappear. The second I mentioned therapy, his face closed. Oh, therapy, he sneered. Of course. So now, some stranger tells you your family is the problem and you just believe them. I felt my throat tighten. She didn't tell me that, I said. You just did. We stared at each other across the tiny room. The vending machine hummed. An automatic air freshener sprayed something that smelled vaguely like citrus and chemicals. I'm not asking, he said finally. You're my child. You come home when your family needs you. That's how it works. I took a breath that felt like it scraped my lungs on the way in. I'll come for the funeral, I said. I'll help with the paperwork. I'll stay a bit, but I'm not moving back. I'm not undoing my life, because you don't know how to be alone. His eyes went flat. You're breaking my heart, he said. You're breaking mine, I said quietly. That was it. That was the moment. The argument swelled and spilled over from there, of course. Voices rose. Old resentments climbed out of the corners like spiders. The time I took a gap year, the boyfriend he hated, the fact that I didn't go to church anymore, that I forgot to call on a Sunday once. But underneath it all was that simple break. He wanted me to come back. I wanted him to let me go. At some point, the nurse knocked on the door and asked us to keep it down. At some point, he said, if your mother could see you now, she'd be ashamed. At some point, I said, if Mum could see you now, she'd tell you to stop using her as a weapon. We did the funeral in the same church she'd been baptized in. He gave a eulogy that made people cry. I couldn't speak. My voice had moved into some other part of my body and refused to come out. I went back to Berlin 3 days after we buried her. He didn't come to the airport. I texted him from the gate. Flight delayed. Love you. He replied, okay. That was 5 years ago. We haven't spoken since. People assume distance makes estrangement easier to manage. Oh, you live abroad, they say. Well, that helps. Out of sight, out of mind. I used to think that too. And then, 2 years after the funeral, my company opened a new office in our hometown. Well, my boss said on a video call, you grew up there. You speak the language. You know the culture. You'd be perfect to help build the team. I laughed, mostly to buy time. Is this optional? I asked carefully. It's a promotion, she said. Better title, better pay. We'd move you back to your own country, close to your family. What do you think? I thought. My mother is in a cemetery on the south side of that city. My father is somewhere on the north side, pretending I no longer exist. Out loud, I said, it sounds interesting. Let me think about it. We had another session in therapy that week. So, Dr. Weber said, folding his hands, Berlin or home? He put Home in air quotes. You enjoy doing that, don't you? I muttered. Just noticing which words you use, he said. You call Berlin my life, and your hometown home, when other people say it, not when you do. He had that habit of pointing out things I didn't know I was doing until he said them. I stared at the ceiling. If I go back, I said, I'll be in the same city as my father, and we won't talk. That feels complicated. More complicated than living a plane ride away and not talking? He asked. Yes, I said immediately. Then I forced myself to explain. When I'm here, he feels far away. The silence is big, but it's also easy to ignore. If I'm there, every corner might remind me of him. Every supermarket, every football game on TV. I'll know that if I get on the tram for 20 minutes, I could be near his flat, and I still won't go. That feels harsher. Harsher to whom? Dr. Weber asked gently. I hesitated. To him, I said. Then, quieter, to me. He nodded. It's one kind of pain to know someone is far away and you're not speaking. It's another kind to know they're close and you're still not speaking. Both are real. I don't know if I'm strong enough for the second kind, I admitted. Or, he said, you don't know if you're ready to admit that the distance isn't the problem. The relationship is. I wanted to be annoyed at him. I also knew he was right. In the end, I took the promotion. Partly because it was a good career move. Partly because my rent in Berlin had started to look like a bad joke. Partly, and I hated admitting this, because a small, stubborn part of me wanted to see if my father would break the silence if I moved back. He didn't. I didn't either. We became two dots on the same map, moving through the city without crossing. I rented a small flat near the river, with a view of the tram line and a bakery downstairs that made obscene cinnamon rolls. I went to work, to bars, to parks. I made new friends. I drove past the cemetery in taxis and looked away. Sometimes, on Sunday afternoons, I'd walk past the stadium and hear the roar of the crowd. Dad and I had watched games there together when I was a kid. He'd buy me a hot dog and complain about the manager's tactics for 90 minutes straight. Now, I watched from my couch. Sometimes, the camera would pan across the crowd and I'd scan the faces, looking for him. It was like looking for a single raindrop in a storm. He still posted on Facebook. I knew that much because my aunt would send me screenshots. Your dad at the game, she wrote once, along with a photo of him and some old friends, scarves around their necks, beers in their hands. He looked fine. Tired, but fine. Looks good, I replied. You could go with him sometime, she added, like she was suggesting a new brand of cereal. I didn't answer. Estrangement makes other people deeply uncomfortable. They want a neat narrative. We fought. We reconciled. Now we're closer than ever. People don't know what to do with. We live in the same city, and I haven't heard my father's voice in half a decade. So they offer solutions. Life's short, you know. You only get one father. He won't be around forever. None of them say the other part out loud, and if he dies before you make up, you'll regret it forever, and it will be your fault. The thing no one talks about is that sometimes staying away is the only way you know how to love yourself at all. In 5 years of silence, you'd be surprised how many times you almost bump into a person. Once, I saw him on the tram. I was scrolling through my phone, half listening to a podcast about attachment theory, when the tram stopped at Nordstrasse. The doors opened, people shuffled on, and there he was. He sat down in the middle of the carriage, 3 rows ahead, facing me diagonally. Same navy coat, same thick hands. Hair a little thinner now, a little more gray. I froze. Every cell in my body knew him. It was like my nervous system was a dog whose owner had just walked in, ears up, body alert, tail wanting to wag. But the leash was held in place by something else. He didn't see me. The tram was full, and he was looking out the window, lost in thought. My brain jumped into a frantic debate. Get up. Go say hi. It's your father. Stay put. You decided not to do this anymore. Don't ambush yourself. What if this is the last chance you get? What if this is a moment you'll replay in your head from his funeral someday, wishing you'd stayed seated? My heart hammered. I watched his reflection in the window. He rubbed a hand over his face. He looked older, smaller somehow. I stood up halfway. My legs wobbled. Then the tram jerked. Someone bumped into me. I grabbed the rail, sat back down. We reached his stop. He stood, pulled the cord, stepped off. The doors closed. I didn't move. For 3 more stops, I sat there, staring at the empty space where he'd been. When I got home, I went straight to the bathroom and threw up. Another time, I saw him at the supermarket. He was in the bread aisle, squinting at the labels like he was comparing prices. I was 2 aisles over, holding a jar of pasta sauce I no longer wanted. I watched him from the end of the shelf, slightly hidden by a display of discount cereal. It felt illegal, this unannounced glimpse into his life. He had a different shopping basket now, one of those small trolleys instead of the big one we'd used when we went as a family. He had a list in his hand. Mum had always shopped by instinct. He was trying to learn to do it her way, and failing. A woman walked up to him, about his age, maybe a bit younger. They chatted for a moment, laughing at something I couldn't hear. She touched his arm briefly. Something ugly and unfamiliar twisted in my chest. Jealousy. Not romantic jealousy. Something worse. She knew what his voice sounded like now. I didn't. I ducked back behind the cereal display and left my basket near the dairy section. I walked out without buying anything. The almosts stacked up over the years. Messages I typed and never sent. Voicemails I started and deleted. Moments when I thought, this is it. This is the time I call. Then I'd remember that the last words he'd said to me that weren't logistics or weather updates were, if your mother could see you now, she'd be ashamed. It's hard to build a bridge from there. It happened on a Tuesday. Grief never checks your Google Calendar. Neither does family. I was in line at a coffee shop near the office, mentally rehearsing a presentation. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. I get a lot of spam packages I didn't order, banks I don't use, politicians I didn't vote for. But something made me look. The message was short. Are you in Berlin, Dad? My stomach dropped. My first irrational thought was that I'd time traveled, that I was back in that hospital corridor, back before everything broke. Then my brain caught up. He didn't know. He didn't know I had moved back to the city 2 years ago, that I'd been living 15 minutes away this whole time. A weird, hysterical laugh bubbled up. Of course, he didn't know. We didn't follow each other on anything anymore. I'd blocked him on Instagram the night he left a comment about one of my pictures that started with, "Your mother would have hated." He wasn't in my day-to-day life. I wasn't in his. Still, the question hung there. Are you in Berlin? He still thought of my life as happening somewhere else. I stared at the screen until the barista had to say, "Next," twice. I typed, "No, I live here now." Then deleted it. I typed, "Why?" Deleted that too. My coffee arrived. I took it with a hand that wasn't entirely steady. I took the cup to a table in the corner, sat down, and did the thing Dr. Weber and I had practiced. I took a breath, and I asked myself what I actually wanted before I reacted. Did I want to reopen this? Did I want him to know I'd been in the same city, silent? Did I want to know why he was asking? After 5 years of stubborn, heavy, quiet, this tiny crack felt terrifying. I texted my cousin, Laura, who has never sugarcoated anything in her life. He just texted me, I wrote. Are you in Berlin? From a new number. 10 seconds later, my phone rang. Answer him, she said, without saying hello. I don't know if I want to, I replied. You do, she said. Otherwise, you wouldn't have texted me. Maybe I just wanted to complain, I said. Alex, she sighed. He's still your father. There it is, I muttered. What? The line, I said. He's still your father, as if that cancels everything. It doesn't cancel anything, she said. It just complicates things. Look, I'm not going to tell you to forgive him and run into his arms, but if he's reaching out, maybe there's a reason. Like what? I snapped. Like he's getting older, she said. Like he's scared, or lonely, or sick, or maybe he saw you on the tram and finally realized you're not a ghost. Did he tell you to call me? I asked sharply. No, she said. He doesn't know I'm talking to you. He barely talks about you at all, which, by the way, is its own kind of grief for the rest of us. I pinched the bridge of my nose. What if I answer, I said quietly, and it goes right back to that hospital corridor, to guilt and obligation and him calling me selfish. Then you hang up, she said, or you stop replying. You're not trapped in his narrative anymore. The idea felt foreign. For so long, not replying had been my only power. The idea that I could reply and still walk away if it hurt too much, that sounded like advanced emotional calculus. I'll think about it, I said. Do more than think, she replied. Whatever you decide, decide on purpose, not by default. I hung up. The message still waited, small and loaded. Are you in Berlin? I typed, no. Paused. Added, I moved back 2 years ago. My finger hovered over send for a full 5 seconds. Then I tapped. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. It was like watching a heart monitor. Oh, he wrote. I didn't know. I laughed again, a sound that made the woman at the next table glance over. No, I typed. You didn't. 20 seconds. Can we meet? He wrote. 3 words, 2 syllables each, enough to unlock a flood. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I closed my eyes and pictured him, in his little flat with the 2 big furniture they'd brought from the house, sitting at the kitchen table with his glasses low on his nose, stabbing at his phone with 1 finger. I pictured myself at 13, waiting in the stands for him to come back with snacks at halftime. I pictured myself at 28, walking away from his car at the airport, dragging my suitcase like a shield. Can we meet? I thought about the 5 years of silence, the almosts, the anger, the way my chest sometimes ached when I walked past a father-daughter pair in the street. I opened my eyes. I typed, maybe. Then, not at your place, not at mine, somewhere neutral. He replied faster this time. You choose, he wrote. So I did. I picked a cafe in the middle of the city, halfway between his flat and mine, 2 blocks from the river. It had big windows and terrible chairs and good coffee. Public, neutral, easy to leave. We agreed on Saturday, 11 a.m. The night before, I barely slept. I cleaned my flat at midnight, like he was coming over, then laughed at myself. I changed my outfit 3 times. Dr. Weber would have had a field day analyzing that. In the morning, I left early and walked the long way. It was cold but sunny, the kind of crisp day that makes the city look almost pretty. At exactly 10:59, I pushed open the cafe door. He was already there. Of course he was. My father is physically incapable of being late to anything. He sat at a table by the window, hands wrapped around a coffee cup, staring at the street as if trying to see me before I arrived. For a second, I considered turning around. Then he looked up. Our eyes met through the glass. There was no graceful exit after that. I walked to the table. "Hi," I said. "Hi," he replied. Up close, the changes were obvious. More lines around his eyes, a new heaviness in his shoulders. The brown in his hair had retreated, leaving more gray than I remembered. He stood up awkwardly, like he wasn't sure if we were still in hug territory. We weren't, not yet. We shook hands. It was absurd. I almost laughed. He gestured to the chair. "I already ordered you a coffee," he said. "Flat white, right?" The fact that he'd remembered that detail made my throat tighten. "Thanks," I said, sitting down. "How are you?" It was the kind of question you ask neighbors in the stairwell, not fathers you haven't spoken to in half a decade. But it was all I had. He shrugged. "Getting old," he said. "You?" "Same," I replied, and for a moment we both smiled. A small, shared joke in a sea of unsaid things. The coffees arrived. The barista mispronounced my name. Nothing had changed. "How's Berlin?" he asked, and immediately winced. "Sorry. Habit." "I moved back," I reminded him. "I've been here 2 years." "Right," he said quickly. "Right. And you like it? The job?" "It's good," I said. "Stressful, but good. I lead a team now." He nodded, impressed. "Your mother would be proud," he said. It landed differently this time. Not a weapon, a statement. I nodded. We sipped in silence. This was harder than the fight. At least in the hospital, we'd had something to bounce off. Mum's illness, the funeral, the logistics. Here, we had 5 years of accumulated silence sitting between us like a third person. He cleared his throat. "I saw you on the tram," he blurted. "A while back. Maybe a year? I'm not sure." My heart lurched. "I saw you too," I admitted. "You did?" he asked, surprised. "Yes," I said. "You didn't look up." He grimaced. I didn't know what to do," he said. "I thought, if I stand up, you'll think I'm ambushing you. If I say nothing, I'm a coward. So I chose nothing." "Me too," I said softly. He let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "We're quite good at nothing," he said. 5 years of practice, I agreed. We both smiled, and this time it reached our eyes, just a little. "Why now?" I asked, cutting through the small talk. "Why the message this week?" He looked down at his hands. "I had a scare," he said. "At work, sharp pain in my chest. Thought, well, that's it, heart attack, that's how it ends. Turned out it was indigestion and stress. But for 30 minutes in the ambulance, I lay there thinking, my daughter doesn't even know." My own chest tightened. "I'm not telling you to make you feel guilty," he added quickly, "or to drag you back into my life out of pity. I just realized I was more afraid of dying without trying than I was of being rejected." "That's honest," I said. "Thank you." He nodded. "My therapist says I should try honesty," he muttered. I blinked. "Your therapist?" He almost smiled. "You think you're the only one who can go?" he asked. "Your aunt pushed me into it. She said if I didn't talk to someone about losing your mother, I'd turn into a statue." "How's that going?" I asked, genuinely curious. He shrugged. "He makes me talk about feelings," he said. "I hate it. But sometimes I sleep better after." We sat with that for a moment. "I'm glad you're going," I said. "Me too, most days," he admitted. He asked me, last week, who I'd regret not calling if I dropped dead tomorrow. Your name came out before I could even think. The image made my eyes sting. "And yet," I said, "when I did call, you told me Mum would be ashamed of me." He flinched. "That was a horrible thing to say," he said quietly. "I know that now. I think I half knew it then, too. Then why did you say it? I asked. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw not my father, the authority figure, but a man who had been married for 32 years and then suddenly wasn't. Because I wanted you to hurt as much as I was hurting, he said. And you were talking about flights and jobs and Berlin like any of that mattered more than your mother. It felt like betrayal. I wanted you to feel guilty enough to stay. We let the words sit there. Heavy, ugly, true. It worked, I said. I did feel guilty. For a long time. He swallowed. I'm sorry, he said. The words came out rough, like he wasn't used to them. I know, I said. But saying sorry doesn't fix everything. I don't expect it to, he replied. I needed you to hear it, even if you stand up now and walk out and I never see you again. I stared at the foam in my cup. I'm not going to stand up and walk out, I said. Why not? He asked, almost curious. Because I'm tired, I said. Tired of walking away like that's the only move we have. He nodded slowly. I thought you were happier without us, he said after a moment. Without me? Berlin, new job, friends. I told myself, she got what she wanted. She's free. It was easier to be angry than to admit I missed you. My eyes blurred. I was happier without the pressure, I said. Without the guilt trips. Without the Sunday calls that were half weather report, half interrogation. But I wasn't happier without you. That's not how it works. He looked up sharply. You weren't? He asked. No, I said. I missed you every time something good happened. Promotion, new flat, stupid little things like a funny sign in the supermarket. I'd think Dad would laugh at that, and then remember we weren't speaking. He swallowed hard. So we both sat in our separate corners, he said, missing each other and too proud to move. Something like that, I said. We sat there, two people who had lost the same woman in different ways, holding our coffees like lifelines. I can't go back to how it was, I said finally. I can't be the daughter who moves because you tell her to, who answers every call, who spends every Sunday at your place so you don't feel lonely. I can't do that without losing myself again. I know, he said. I don't want that either. You don't? I asked, skeptical. He shook his head. My therapist asked me what kind of relationship I wanted with you. I said, the kind where she calls me every day and comes over whenever I say. He asked, and what kind of relationship do you think she wants? I realized I didn't know, because I'd never asked. He looked at me. What kind of relationship do you want, Alex? He asked. No one had ever asked me that before, not like that. I started, then faltered. I want something that doesn't make me feel like I'm failing either you or myself all the time. I want to be able to say no without you hearing, I don't love you. I want to call you when I want to, not because I'm scared of what people will say if I don't. He nodded slowly. I can work with that, he said. It's not a contract, I said. I don't even know if I can get all the way to what other people have. Sunday lunches, inside jokes, whatever. I just know I'm willing to try something small. Small is good, he said. Small is more than nothing. We agreed on something that would have seemed ridiculous years earlier. We'd start with a coffee every 2 weeks. No funerals, no big family events, no overnight obligations. Just two people meeting for an hour in a public place. If, after a while, it felt too heavy, we could stop. No drama, no declarations, just an experiment. Is that enough for you? I asked. No, he said honestly. If I'm honest, I want more. I want to see you every week, know your friends, complain about your boss with you. I want grandchildren. He smiled sadly. But I've spent a lot of time wanting things so hard I squeezed them until they ran away. So I'm trying something new, taking what you're actually offering instead of trying to bully you into giving me more. That, more than the apology, made something loosen in my chest. "Okay," I said. "Coffee then." We finished our drinks. When we left, we didn't hug. We didn't make grand pronouncements. We just walked out into the cold city air and went in opposite directions, like we had 100 times before. This time, it felt different. This time, we had a date on the calendar. That was a year ago. We haven't magically turned into a heartwarming IKEA commercial family. Sometimes, our coffee dates are awkward. We talk about football and weather. We sit in silence. He complains about his back. I complain about my boss. We both avoid the word mum like it's made of glass. Sometimes, though, we get it right. He asks about my projects and actually listens without turning it into a lecture. I tell him about therapy, and he doesn't roll his eyes. He tells me he went to a grief support group, and I resist the urge to say, finally. On good days, we even laugh. Like the time he confessed he once tried to look up my Berlin neighborhood on Google Street View and got lost. "I kept clicking," he said, miming the motions, "but all the streets looked the same. I gave up and watched the football highlights instead." "Classic you," I said, and we both smiled. We still live in the same city. We still don't talk every day. Sometimes a week or two passes between texts, and that's okay. The difference is that now, when I pass the stadium, I think, maybe we'll go together again someday. Instead of, if he's there and drops dead, I'll see it on the news before I see it in person. Last month, we went to the cemetery together for the first time since the funeral. He'd been going alone on Sundays. I'd been going alone on random Tuesdays, leaving small, stupid things. Mum would have liked daisies, a packet of her favorite biscuits, a printed meme. We agreed on a time, and I almost canceled twice. But I went. We stood by the simple stone with her name on it. He brought flowers. I brought nothing, which felt wrong, but he didn't mention it. He arranged them carefully. Then we just stood there. "How are you, love?" he asked the stone, like she was just inside taking a nap. I swallowed. "I'm seeing our daughter again," he said. "She's still stubborn. Gets that from you." I huffed out a laugh. He looked at me. "Tell her," he said quietly. I cleared my throat. "Mom," I said, feeling ridiculous and exposed. "I live here now, in the city. I have a job I like. I see Dad sometimes. We're figuring it out, slowly." The wind picked up. Leaves rustled. Somewhere, a car door slammed. "She'd like that," he said. "You don't know that," I replied automatically. He smiled. "No," he said, "I don't, but it feels better to imagine she would." We stayed for 10 more minutes. On the way out, he said, "Do you want to get lunch? No pressure." I checked my watch. I had no plans. "Sure," I said. We walked to a small place nearby that did decent soup and terrible coffee. We talked about nothing important. It was good. On the tram home, I caught my reflection in the window. For a second, I thought I saw Mum behind me. That small, satisfied smile she used to get when she'd successfully mediated an argument. "Don't be cheesy," I muttered to myself. A kid sitting nearby looked at me and giggled. When I got home, I sat on my couch and texted Dr. Weber. "Met my father and didn't cry in public. Progress?" He replied with a thumbs up and, uncharacteristically, a smiley face. That night, I lay in bed and listened to the city noises, the tram bell, the distant sirens, someone arguing 2 floors down. I thought about the version of my life where I'd never answered that message, where my father and I kept orbiting each other in the same city, like 2 planets pretending gravity didn't apply. In that version, I'm probably still scanning crowds at the stadium, looking for his face and telling myself I'm better off not knowing. In this version, I still don't know how long we have. People like to say life is short, But the truth is, it's also long. Long enough to stay angry for years. Long enough to try again, awkwardly, and see what happens. We live in the same city. We didn't speak for 5 years. Now, once every 2 weeks, we sit at a cafe halfway between his flat and mine, and we learn how to be in the same story again. It isn't a cinematic reconciliation. There's no swelling music, no dramatic declarations. There's just this. When my phone buzzes and I see his name now, my first reaction isn't dread. It's a small, quiet thought I never expected to have again. I wonder what he wants to tell me. And sometimes, amazingly, I kind of want to hear it.